Hello, everyone. I'm here to do an interview with a good friend of mine on Facebook, and who's a really good paleo artist, Christopher um,
Srnika.
Zerka. So, how did you start with dinosaurs and paleo art?
Well, like a lot of kids, I always had an interest in dinosaurs and I was always drawing them. I didn't really take it seriously though until probably the late 80s, early 90s. And a big part of that came when I saw Gregory S. Paul's book, Predatory Dinosaurs of the World, which came out, I think, in 1988. And up until then, most of the pictures of dinosaurs that you saw were kind of like Godzilla. They kind of were upright and kind of walking along with their tail dragging down there. And then with Robert Bacher and Gregory S. Paul, all of a sudden they look more like the dinosaurs that we know today. When we see T-Rex in Jurassic Park, where it's kind of agile and moving fast and very stealthy sometimes, very active. So that was really exciting to me. And around that time, Jurassic Park was starting to come out. And I was like, oh, I should get a poster. And then I thought, I could draw a poster. What am I doing? So I started doing that. And then, at first, it wasn't so much paleo art as it was pictures of dinosaurs, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
After that, I started to think about how much work and effort went into making real paleo art, that you had to look at anatomy. You had to look at skeletal structure. You had to look at comparative anatomy with modern animals to see how muscles attach, to see how much fat might be in a certain sections, and how they might move, how they might behave. And so I started to take a lot more interest in that and developed some relationships with paleontologists and other artists who were doing the same thing. And I just kind of learned from that.
Wow, interesting. Um, Even like when you started coloring the prehistoric creatures and stuff like that, that was your like when did you start coloring? About the same time?
Yeah, yeah, around the same time. It was, uh, yeah, I mean, seriously, pursuing it probably was early 90s. So probably around 94, 95, I think. And that's when I really started to kind of bring it all together. Bringing
Interesting.
color into it was, when I was really young, I was just going by what I saw in dinosaur books, which was mostly, you had your greens and your grays and your reds, which it's still pretty common now. But I was mostly
Yeah.
copying what I saw in the books.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to to say like which dinosaur, like what's the color of this dinosaur and this and that, because it's really hard.
Yeah, and you see some strange color combinations coming out nowadays, and I think part of that is um, there's a desire on modern paleo art to try to push the boundaries of what people are expecting, right? So you look at modern animals and see, well, birds are extant dinosaurs; they're theropods, basically.
Yeah.
And they have a wide array of really vibrant colors, some really bold color patterns, and a lot of people kind of latch onto that. And you'll see some that copy almost exactly. You'll see, a Tyrannosaurus that looks like a mallard, or a Velociraptor that looks like a cassowary or something like that. And I think it's the right idea, but I think it's a little lazy in some ways. Because you're not really likely to see a cassowary color on a Tyrannosaurus or a mallard or something. It's a different ecological niche that it's in. Bright colors work for birds because they can generally fly away if there's problems, and if you look at the predatory dinosaurs that are with us today, the hawks and eagles and so forth, they generally don't have really bright colors. They have little patches of great patterning, and sometimes little splashes of colors like a bearded vulture. But for the most part, your really colorful birds are not predators, because they're basically trying to attract a mate, and they can fly away if a predator comes nearby. You don't really see that in big predators in most of the land animals.
Interesting. Like if I was a paleo artist and if I wanted to do like my own coloring, like if I drew like dromaeosaurs, for example, I would just do like birds of prey like coloring. Like for example, Utah raptor coloring would be a harpy eagle or whatever, or a kilobator would be a bald eagle or whatever, and tyrannosaurs would be like crocodilian like coloring or whatever. Since dromaeosaurs, in my opinion, they acted more like birds of prey, while tyrannosaurs were more crocodilian-like. It makes more logical sense, but that's just me, though.
Mhm. I
Yeah,
think another thing to keep in mind is birds, for example, like eagles and hawks, they have a kind of counter shading that works well for them flying very high, right? So they have a lighter underbelly to kind of blend in with the sky. And
mhm,
the darks, grays, and browns and everything like that tend to be on the dorsal side on their backs. They don't really need to camouflage there, but when they're on the ground, if they want to hide what they're doing, if they've got prey down there, they don't want another raptor to come along and get them. Then they've got that kind of camouflage. With alligators, it's kind of the same sort of thing. You've got a lighter underbelly because when you're looking up from down below in the water, you've got the light from the sky that's up there. So I think you have to kind of look a little bit more towards the terrestrial carnivores. Yeah, and there's still some counter shading there, like for example, with tigers or wolves or something like that. But if you look at those animals, even though they're mammals, I think for me that's a model that I tend towards a little bit more in terms of like the integument, in terms of whether it's scaly or smooth or whatever like that. I look a little bit more towards the birds and the crocodilians for that. But I think for overall coloration, especially with the predatory dinosaurs, I tend to look more towards the bigger carnivores that we have today. Even bears, they're pretty bland. If you look at their coloration, it's pretty much it's all brown, it's all black. If you get a spectacled bear, you've got something with a little bit more color. But um, you know, a little bit more leeway, I think, even with some of the larger ceratopsians and stegosaurs, ankylosaurs, and something like that.
yeah,
An ankylosaur or a stegosaurus, they don't really have a heck of a lot to fear um, from a predator. They've got a lot of armor, they've got a lot of weapons, so I can imagine them having a lot brighter coloration, probably way more so than most people think. On the other hand, we do have fossils, I think of Boreopelta, that shows kind of a reddish brown or rust brown coloration throughout. So I could be wrong. There's just
yeah,
always so many things coming out that kind of switch what we think we know about it.
yeah. I mean, like in your Tyrannosaurus Rex artwork, the coloring looks like a lion-like coloring,
Mhm. Yeah.
which is pretty cool. And at first, I thought that one of your Rexes, the one that's like attacking the Amontosaurus in a gang or a family group or whatever,
Mhm.
looks like they had feathers. Did you put feathers on them?
There was a point in time when it was kind of all the rage, if you want to say it that way, and people were just throwing feathers on everything. And I've walked that back considerably, especially when it comes to Tyrannosaurids, because we have some good integument now, good scales, which strongly suggests that if there were any kind of feathers or filaments or anything like that, they would be very sparse and probably wouldn't be enough to even be visible from a distance. They certainly wouldn't fossilize. It kind of keeps the door open for people who are just eager to have everything to have feathers. But in practical terms, some of those pieces that you're talking about, I've actually made newer ones that have taken the feathers off. But because it's kind of tough to keep up with the changing things. I haven't updated all of them yet, but yeah, I
Yeah,
would definitely put the Tyrannosaurids, especially, and maybe all of Tyrannosaurinae, for the most part, if there's any feathers at all, it'll be very sparse. Of course, we do know that there are dinosaurs that are absolutely feathered, dromaeosaurs,
of course.
uh, I mean, we've got tons of evidence for that. But when it comes to the Tyrannosaurids, especially, more and more, every time that we find any kind of impression, it's always scales.
Yeah. Uh, and at least that you don't draw like fan fiction artwork, like for example, the Pachyrhinosaurus having feathers or whatever,
Oh, those
or
that look like woolly rhinoceroses. Yeah, those are kind of wild.
yeah,
I think that again, people that are interested in paleo art and are inspired by it, they're great. But a lot of times they're taking an idea and taking it beyond the evidence. And sometimes doing things that don't make sense just because it's different and it stands out a little bit.
Yeah.
Sometimes following the evidence is a little bit more boring. Sometimes it's more exciting. It just kind of depends. But I think one of the
Yeah.
things I try to remember is that I'm not designing a creature for a movie. I'm not trying to make a scarier dinosaur for the sake of making it scarier. If it looks scarier just naturally, then that so be it. But I'm not setting out to make one that just terrifies people.
Yeah, exactly. And people, and some artists like go over the top. Like for example, like the Dreadnoughtus with the bubbly air sac thing.
Yeah,
A lot of sauropod fans were actually very pissed off at Dr. Darian H's theory of Dreadnoughtus having the air sacs. I mean,
yeah. Well, it's
sauropods would they would have
yeah,
a type of air sac, but they just wouldn't have like those little bubble things.
it's one of those things that's kind of an offshoot from, I think, the mindset that uh, the book All Yesterdays kind of inspired, which is this idea that we're not thinking weird enough. I mean, that's the gist of it. Basically, is that we're thinking too simplistically. We're not thinking weird enough, which is fine. But when it comes to saying that's it's not even a hypothesis really to say it had air sacs. There's really zero evidence to support it or refute it. It's basically just it's a feature that doesn't necessarily it isn't impossible, but there's no evidence for it being there. It's kind of like saying, well, there's no evidence for big floppy ears on a stegosaurus, so there's no evidence against it. So why not show big floppy ears on a stegosaurus? It just doesn't,
Yeah,
it
yeah. Like when I
it's
was
visually interesting for sure.
like when I saw this this YouTuber who had like a floppy ears on a sauropod, I kind of questioned him and he kind of freaked out.
Mm.
And it's like, dude, it's just a question. Why did you put like floppy ears on a sauropod like that? It's just there's no evidence.
Right.
Maybe with some of the smaller theropods, yes, since they're more bird-like. Sauropods are not bird-like. That's the problem.
Yeah, well, features like that, especially when it comes to soft tissue, things like external ears. If you look at modern birds and crocodilians, I mean, there's not really a heck of a lot going on externally as far as ears go. The really interesting ones are the owls, who have offset ears that are really designed, specialized to facilitate their sonar. When they're locating prey. I mean, everything about those animals is very, very specialized, including the location of their ears. I know, I forget who it was, had kind of floated the idea that, well, maybe tyrannosaurs had that. And I don't know that there's any evidence for it. I thought it was like, oh, it's a cool idea, but how do you prove that or disprove it? I mean, there's really no way. And so it just becomes an unfalsifiable hypothesis, which is scientifically kind of useless.
Yeah.
It's aesthetics
And
at that point.
yeah, and I noticed that you don't put lips on your theropods. They're lipless. Even though that I'm kind of like done with the debate, but it's still pretty cool that you have the idea of the lipless theropods, such as your Tyrannosaurus Rex artwork and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think something that's important to remember is that it's not one size fits all. For dinosaurs, I think there are probably Dromaeosaurs and some of the other theropods. They could have very well had lips, and that's fine. The thing that kind of brings me around with the Tyrannosaurids, though, especially is Dr. Thomas Carr's discovery on Dysplesiosaurus. Of finding the rugosities and the pits and everything that are on the maxilla and the mandible, I want to say the dentary, that indicate something a little bit closer to like a crocodilian type skin that goes right up to the margin of the dentary and the maxilla, which don't really leave any room for lips. And, you know, the arguments for it and against it have gone back and forth. And this is for dinosaurs, theropods in general, for a long, long time. And it seems like, you know, every so often somebody will come out with another paper or another study, and everyone's like, oh, well, that's it for sure. It's lips. And then 5
Yeah.
years later, somebody will come out with another thing and say, well, no, no lips. And it'll go back
That's
and
why,
forth.
like I say that until we find a mummy, we will know the truth. But there's going to be people out there that say that, well, there's no tyrannosaur mummy or whatever. Well, it's a possibility,
Mhm.
you know. Everything is possible. I mean, for God's sakes, there's already a mummified hadrosaur. Hadrosaurs, a bunch of them, and there's also a mummified what was it, a nodosaur or an ankylosaurine?
Yeah, the notosaur, yeah. That's the
Yeah,
Boreal Pelta was one of them, and there was another one. I don't even know if it was named or not, but spectacular preservation on those guys. Amazing.
yeah, exactly. So everything's possible,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah, I think probably the most compelling physical evidence I've seen so far mentioned as far as in favor of lips for Tyrannosaurus was a paper that was recently published, and I don't remember all the names that were involved in it, but that's fine. And they compared the wear on an alligator tooth versus, I think it was a Daspletosaurus tooth. But they only used a single tooth, which is really disappointing to me because whenever you're doing any kind of comparison like that, you want to take as large a sample size as you can so that you can adjust for, you know, errors and, you know, anomalies. You know, maybe the tooth that they happened to grab was not, you know, the way the common situation is. So I look forward to seeing that expanded upon a little bit more because that's the only real physical piece of evidence that I found new, you know, in the argument that came up recently that seemed compelling to me.
Yeah,
Um, Now, I'm not a paleontologist. I consult with paleontologists, but myself, you know, I kind of rely upon, you know, the guys who are doing the hard work and doing the papers to kind of give me the insight on some of this stuff too.
even like guys like Tracy Ford and etc.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. You see, I always think that like if theropods had lips, at least that when they open their mouths, you can see the toothy grin, like we saw in Prehistoric Planet. Like if you look at the Prehistoric Planet theropods, when they open their mouths, it's like they look like a lipless animal, well, lipless theropod, but no, they don't. Like I just don't think that they were all too gummy-ish like monitor lizards. It's just because obviously, you know, theropods are not lizards, they're just archosaurs.
Yeah, and there's a couple things I think are worth noting there. One is that comparisons that people make with monitor lizards are kind of, in my opinion, flawed. Yes, they have large teeth, but the curve of, you know, their mandible and their maxilla goes kind of like this, as opposed to like a tyrannosaur, which comes like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have large teeth that never reach the margin of the mandible. They never overlap like they do in a tyrannosaur. So it's kind of like saying, well, it can still have big teeth and fit between lips. Yeah, but the shape of the jaw is completely different. So it's not a really one-to-one comparison, and I don't think it's a fair comparison to make. The other thing to think about is there are a lot of things that people will look at modern animals and say, well, you know, no modern animal has this, no modern animal has that. So these animals couldn't have had that. Well, no modern animals are 40-foot long bipeds that can crush a bowling ball easily within their teeth either, but that's the tyrannosaurus for you. You know, these are their own animals and they don't necessarily have a modern analog every time.
Yeah. And yeah, it's like really hard, you know, and it's not that hard, you know, because like when you're studying a prehistoric animal, you have to study their descendants or whatever. Like for example, birds and like, you know, birds and crocodilians, since dinosaurs are related to crocodilians, and of course, birds are dinosaurs. You
Mm-hmm.
know, but what can you do? Oh, and I see you draw feathers before. It drawing feathers, is it hard?
It can be, especially when it comes to the wing feathers. I mean, the feathers on the body. In some ways, it's very similar to fur, and if you can draw fur, it's kind of the same thing. But when you start getting to the wing feathers, getting the primaries and secondaries and everything else like that in the right order and the right position, it requires a little bit more study. And I ended up having to consult with diagrams of bird wings, to try to get the placement and the layering of the feathers a little bit better on that. It's a little bit less of something that's kind of intuitive to me, the way drawing scales is, for example. In ways, it's easier because it's tough to get all the scales in if you're doing a close-up shot of a Tyrannosaurus, for example. You could do a little bit better if you do a farther distant shot, because at a distance, those scales were so small that it practically looks like smooth skin in a lot of ways. But I think that the feathers actually add a lot of potential for display functions, like a cockatoo almost, the big plume on the head. I'm not saying that the dinosaurs had cockatoo plumes, but it just gives you an idea that there could be a lot of structures that maybe wouldn't be evidenced in the fossils. And that's where, these imaginative ideas that I talked about before, making it look like a cassowary or something like that, or a mallard. I think they're on the right track, but I think that it's a little bit lazy when they just put a cockatoo plume on the head of a dinosaur and call it a day. Like, there's got to be something new and interesting that we haven't seen before. You know what I mean? Don't just make a Cryolophosaurus look like an owl or something like that. Do something a little bit different with it.
Yeah. Have you ever drew prehistoric mammals?
I've done a few. Mostly it's actually hominids and some of the classic ones, the woolly mammoth, the saber-toothed tigers, that sort of thing. I haven't gotten into it as much as I would like to, and I think I probably would want to start with probably doing, I want to say the mammoths and the other elephant relatives. Yeah, there's some really interesting ones going all the way back to so many different varieties of near elephants. And this is almost an elephant, but it's got big shovel tusks, on the bottom jaw. There's some really cool
Yeah,
stuff.
that's I know the name of the animal. I just forget the name. It's
Yeah, you can almost throw the word therium or platybelodon. Platybelodon.
yeah, I think that's the name.
Yeah,
Palibelodon.
yeah.
Things like 1 ton, I believe.
Hmm.
Yeah,
It's
it's
interesting to me to see how many different stabs evolution took at solving a problem and all the different solutions it tried to come up with before it settled on, the tusks in the trunk that, became the kind of the solution that they came up with. And, it may just be that the Polybelodon, the adaptations were perfect for the niche that it was in, the type of food it was going for at the time. And it just got kind of unlucky in the evolutionary game.
yeah, yeah, and it's implied that that elephants like came from a like a hippo like animal called Muratherium, and then they evolved into like the most bizarre creatures that like we saw like I cannot pronounce the name. I'm really sorry. Pyrapelodon, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have like the big titans like Paleoloxodon and
Mhm.
Columbian mammoths and woolly mammoths and etc. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's amazing. You know, um, with your saber-toothed cats, like, did you do like spots on them?
I generally didn't, and I didn't do stripes either. I generally kept them very similar to what you might see in a cougar or mountain lion. Kind of a tawny brownish tan hide. It probably would make sense to make it a little bit more lion-like, even with a little bit of a mane. I don't know that there's any evidence for that, but I just think it's one of those things where I kind of feel like you're free to pick the aesthetic that looks good, because it isn't outlandish, and it seems like it's reasonable.
Yeah. Oh,
So I probably would go with that. Stripes, like I said, they could make sense, and stripes come up a lot in nature, and as do spots and rosettes, like they do on jaguars and cheetahs and so forth. So all of those patterns are, of course, they're designed to do the same thing, which is to break up the shape so that it camouflages them against whatever background they're in. So you have to kind of look at the environment to see what's going to make the most sense. In jungles where you're going to have weird shadows coming down, then rosettes or spots maybe make a little bit more sense than if you're in a savanna where you've got tall grass and stripes, it might make more sense. Or jungles sometimes. I don't know.
I wonder what species you did, like what species of Smilodon you did at the time.
Oh, it was Smilodon fatalis.
Oh, yeah, because I was gonna say, because I heard rumors that Fatalis and Gracilis may have lived in forested areas, while Populator may have lived in a savanna like area. Like if I was an artist, I would do like both Gracilis and Fatalis to have spots like a leopard or a jaguar, and meanwhile Populator would have like a lion like coloring or a cougar. But
Yeah.
that's just me though.
And,
But
and there's some more varieties too that you can see, like for example in ocelots and lynxes and even if you want to look even at calico cats. I mean, I know it's not exactly the same thing, but there's some interesting color patterning and variation that I think could be explored too. That would still have validity to it and add a little bit more interest to it.
yeah. Who inspired you to be a paleo artist?
Well, I think, as I mentioned before, Gregory S. Paul actually kind of was the first paleo artist that I saw that was kind of inspiring to me. And a lot of his ideas, I think, are still valid. I think he unfairly got kind of pegged as the shrink wrap guy, and I think that was part of a misunderstanding of some of the things he was talking about in Predatory Dinosaurs of the World about reconstructing theropods. And he basically said that because birds and archosaurs in general don't have a lot of facial muscles, they generally have muscles inside the skull. The jaw muscles at the bottom, tend to wrap around a little bit, but otherwise, he said you could almost wrap skin around and be done with it. And that was kind of an exaggeration, I think, because he does go on also to talk about how the sinuses that would be in the fenestrate might be filled with sinuses, and he actually showed those bulging out a little bit in some of his illustrations. But then when you go through this game of telephone, by the time you get to Jurassic World Dominion, you've got the Giganotosaurus that sunken in fenestra that look like the poor thing's been starving for a decade, and it kind of gets turned around.
Not to mention, like, it has a hump on its back or whatever. Like, I always say that it's a mutated Acrocanthosaurus or something.
Yeah. Well, they will fall back for all the Jurassic World stuff is just, they put in somebody else's DNA. That's why it's all screwed up.
Yeah, like that's why I don't focus on the franchise. I mean, I understand obviously it's science fantasy, but it's like they're doing way over the top.
Yeah, when you start to get to like Prehistoric Planet and things that are meant to be a little bit more serious documentaries, then I start to pay more attention to, if they've made a gross error. Like I really actually like the Tyrannosaurus model that they used in there. Even though I don't think that there's as solid evidence for the lips as they've gone with there. I don't hate it, and the amount of kind of filament that they had on it, to me, that's kind of pushing the boundaries of what I think is most likely if it is there. And again, it's the sort of thing that isn't really noticeable until you get up close, and it doesn't really affect, to me, the aesthetic. If I'm concerned about the aesthetic, and to me, it's just kind of like, well, you can take it or leave it. Then why is it there?
Yeah. And I actually do like the Prehistoric Planet Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's actually probably my favorite dinosaur models of the documentary. And I
Mhm.
do believe that if it did had feathers or filaments or whatever, at least they would be like a tiny amount of them. Like you would see, like you won't see it, but if you look up closely, you can see it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And it would even make sense that if it was fully feathered, like I don't know, like a woolly mammoth, for example, even though that hair and feathers are completely different, but it would overheat itself. And
Mhm.
since the Cretaceous period was like really, really hot back then, it would overheat itself, especially an animal that's like what, 7 to 8 tons or more than that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to consider in terms of its anatomy and physiology and the environment, like you said, and their possible lifestyle. You know, if they're, you know, I kind of always think about predators in the modern analogs, even though I said that, you know, you can't always get a modern analog to everything, but you think about wolves versus big cats, you know, and how they hunt. You know, you might have an allosaurus might have a strategy similar to a wolf. You know, you might have a group of them that kind of hound, say, a sauropod uh, or a camptosaurus or something like that, and just kind of like harry it to death. You know, get it to bleed and just kind of wear it out. Whereas a tyrannosaur, it seems like this sort of animal that would do a big chomp on the neck and then, you know, if it could. You know, obviously we have evidence that it tried to take down an Edmontosaurus and bit the tail, and the Edmontosaurus, you know, eat it out of there and healed later. But that's
Yeah,
the big crunching jaws to me. It seems almost like, and I know a lot of people have thought about this before. It seems almost like it would develop that kind of thing, specifically because of all the armor that was being developed by dinosaurs at the time. You know, you got your Triceratops, of course, has the massive frill in the horns, and we've got ankylosaurs with their big, you know, club tails and their big armored, you know, skin all the way to their eyelids and everything. So it's almost like you got to kind of be able to crunch through that stuff to get at the stuff inside. It's like M&Ms, you know, you got the hard candy coating and you got to get to the chocolate inside.
yeah. Um,
So basically, what
like
I'm saying is, I don't really, I see Tyrannosaurus being maybe a little bit more of an ambush hunter as opposed to a
exactly.
pursuit hunter. You know, I don't see him doing a lot of chasing, and when he does try to chase, I can imagine like that Edmontosaurus, you probably might be able to grab the tail and then they'll get away a lot of times.
Yeah, and but the gracile tyrannosaurs like Albertosaurus, Gorgosaurus, they would have been speed demons. Like they would chase the prey animal to death, and then they would do the final kill.
Yeah, their anatomy and physiology and size are much more in line with some of the other earlier theropods, you know, like Allosaurus. Of
Yeah,
course, they're not exactly the same, but you know, it's a similar uh, size and build. I think that kind of lends itself to the idea that they might have had similar hunting strategies. So yeah,
yeah,
again, not every Tyrannosaurus is going to be built equally, you know. So you definitely have Albertosaurus and Gorgosaurus and Daspletosaurus all kind of having their own little spot in the ecological scheme that they could fill in, even though they are similar in size and shape, you know.
yeah. I heard even though that like I heard that Daspletosaurus and Gorgosaurus had hunting different niche partitions. Like
Mhm.
Gorgosaurus hunted the Hadrosaurs, while Daspletosaurus hunted the Ceratopsians, which would make a lot of sense because
Yeah, Daspletosaurus is a little bit more ruggedly built, a little bit more robust. Uh,
like Tyrannosaurus.
yeah, and so yeah, it definitely makes sense to have that split because you want to have different prey items if you're going to be sharing a similar space, you know, geographically. You know, you don't want to be directly competing, you know, with something nearby. So for sure, you want to be able to have your own strategy that's different from the other ones.
Yeah. Um, have you ever collected figures?
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. I've got several of these guys over the
Oh, that's Rebor.
Rebor. Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
Rebor. And let's see, where's my other guy? I had another guy around here. I've got a bunch of guys. I got, you know, my little. This is actually, I
Oh,
think it's a Papo actually.
Papo. Yeah, I have a
Uh,
lot of Papo figures. Well,
and
actually, no, PNSO.
yeah,
Oh, I have that one, the
yeah,
trike, Safari Limited. That's like the best trike they have.
yeah. It's really good. And actually, it's kind of funny. One of the best ones I saw is actually from Kyoto. They have these little mini ones. This is a little mini Tyrannosaurus, very small, but the sculpt is really well done. And in fact, it's actually got a better sculpt in some ways than some of the larger figures. It's really hard to see the detail because I
Yeah,
can't get it in focus. But for such a little figure, it's really cool. I actually use this as reference sometimes because it's small. It's easy to manipulate. Oop, I just lost the tail.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, that's all right.
Oh, have you ever like use your figures and try to imagine to put them in detail, like put them like a copy and paste,
Hmm.
basically like
Uh, Not directly as far as photos go, but I've definitely done it, set them up to do sketches. Like I did that with one that a sketch I did last year that showed a mother triceratops with a youngin that was walking along one side, and an ankylosaurus with another young ankylosaur was coming around the other way, and they were just kind of facing off. And I used some of the figures to model those two animals so that I could get the poses and everything right on that.
yeah. I'm actually trying to do a project on like my figures, like taking them outside and like doing like animalistic things like successful hunts, unsuccessful hunts, fighting, etc.
Mhm.
Like I'm actually trying to do a project of my Edmontosaurus figure from PNSO, and it's basically it's getting chased by a tyrannosaur, but it's cornered, so it has a choice: either surrender or fight. Well, it makes a mock charge, and the tyrannosaur almost takes a bite of the tail of the Edmontosaur, but the Edmontosaurus's tail hits the tyrannosaur to, and the tyrannosaur lays falls to the ground, and the Edmontosaurus just gets the hell out of here fast as it can. Which it would make sense because prey animals need to fight back and they need to get the hell out of there,
Mm-hmm.
you know, which would make sense. I don't think that like they would repeatedly like kill and kill and kill. Well, it depends on the herbivore, though. Like for example, like lions versus zebras. Like when a zebra escapes from a lion, it's not going to like kill the lion. It's going to escape.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna
Well, I think
and it's
a big part of that also is going to depend upon the circumstance. Like, for example, a mother defending her young, if a predator comes in, she might attack it till it's dead or till it leaves, as opposed to it running away from the predator, because it's trying to
yeah,
protect its young.
that makes logical sense. You know.
Yeah. Like, you never want to mess with a mother bear, for example, or a mother cougar or any. I mean, I know they're predators, but even if, going close to any young of an animal. The moms especially tend to be very, very vigorous in their defense of their kin.
Yeah, like very aggressive by their own right.
Yeah,
Do you have fossils?
I only have models of fossils. I don't have any actual fossils. So I've got models of Deinonychus claw, and the artist Bruce Moen made a Archaeopteryx skull that was really nice that I got from him. But for the most part, it's all been model claws. And I've had some model skulls, scale skulls of Tyrannosaurus, for example, which I don't have handy right now, but I have, I think, three of those. One was based on Stan. Actually, two were based on Stan the T-Rex, and another one was based on the tough slug T-Rex, which is really cool.
Yeah,
Uh,
I
and yeah, I really like those, and I use those for reference as well for angles for Tyrannosaurus heads, obviously.
yeah, like I yeah, replicas do count because they want to make them as realistic as they can, but it also depends on the company too. I
Mm-hmm.
know that Bone Clones makes a really like awesome like replicas, and they're awesome, but they're expensive though. Even though that I already have Bone Clone skull, that you probably saw on my Facebook. I have an American lion, short faced bear, dire wolf, Smilodon fatalis, and I'm trying to get more.
Mm-hmm.
And I also do have real fossils as well, like an ammonite, juvenile megalodon tooth, and I have a lot of fossils.
Mm-hmm.
I also
Yeah, I
have
think I
alligator.
might pick up some fossil shark teeth at some point. They're so numerous, that you can probably get a dozen of
Yeah,
them pretty cheap.
yeah. I also have alligator heads too.
Mm.
Like I have like the different growth stages of alligators. Like I have, I think it's an adolescent, then a subadult, and then a mature adult. Yeah, it's It's wild, you know.
Mhm.
Like my mom says that like someday you're gonna make your collection a museum or whatever. Yeah.
Well, there's the joke, going around in memes that, if I ever become rich, I won't tell anybody, but there will be signs. And mine would be that I would make a stadium-sized dinosaur exhibit that would have every specimen known of Tyrannosaurus Rex all in like a central thing, kind of weaving throughout. I think would be
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah. And I also use demonstrations of like what animals would kill this prey animal. Matter of fact, I actually found a deer taxiderm head at my neighborhood, and I took it with me. And I was using a demonstration on how would Smilodon kill its prey, because Smilodon is a throat slasher, and it would make logical sense. It wouldn't bite the nostril like most cats, and it would not bite the head
Hmm.
of a prey animal because the teeth will get stuck.
Yeah.
So it would make logical sense that it would be a throat slasher. You know?
Yeah. And here's the sponsored content of the video, my Monster energy drink. Thank you, Monster, for sponsoring this video.
Yeah. Um, yeah. What
That's
else?
the fuel that paleo artists use, energy drinks.
Yeah. I know that people do like, what am I trying to say? Crap, I forgot. I always forget these things. Have you played like video games?
Yeah. Um, and I haven't played any of the dinosaur theme ones that I know are popular now, like Path of Titans. I'm aware of it, but I just haven't had the time really to get into it. I've just been kind of busy with life and work, and so I'd like to dive into it at some point, but I haven't really played any of those. I think the last dinosaur themed one was Jurassic Park Operation Genesis. The park
I,
building one.
I love that game.
Yeah.
That's like the best Jurassic Park game because they treat dinosaurs as animals. And
Mhm.
sometimes like you can treat your JPOG as like a documentary, you could say. Like I seen like people on YouTube, like YouTubers back in the day, like they treated like their JPOG dinosaurs as like Walking with Dinosaurs, for example.
Mhm.
And that's pretty cool. And I was trying to do that, before I even had a YouTube channel. Um, I did you look at Prehistoric Kingdom?
I have looked at it. Not so impressed.
Really, I'm shocked.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking of the wrong thing then. Are we talking about a game or are you talking about a series, TV series?
It's a video game.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm probably thinking of something else then.
Yeah,
I'll take a look. I'm not sure if I probably have seen it. I just don't recognize the name.
because their Tyrannosaurus Rex model is so awesome.
Let me take a look at it right now. Prehistoric Kingdom.
Yeah. I like how the Tyrannosaurus has like half lips because that's what they were doing, and their Smilodon is so pretty cool. Like all of their models are very cool, even though that they also had the fan fiction Pachyrhinosaurus, which is the one with the feathers.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was my problem. And they also have a Tyrannosaurus that's like fully covered in feathers.
Oh, yeah, I'm seeing it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good.
They also have the Spinosaurus. I think it was the 2020 Spinosaurus that they did.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks pretty decent. I'll have to check it out. One thing, too, I was going to mention before we were talking about when I got into paleo art, that was partially inspired by Jurassic Park coming out and how cool it was. And it was the first time on screen that you saw a T-Rex that looked like what we now think of as T-Rex, in a lot of ways. Obviously, there are things that are off by it that either we didn't know or they just didn't pay attention to. But it's very easy to see modern artists who are basically copying the design of the Jurassic Park T-Rex, just in the way that the brow ridges go, or the way that the eyes are sunken in, or the way that the jugal kind of cuts into the lower jaw with this little notch thing. And these are all kind of like telltale signs where I'm like, yep, you looked at Jurassic Park, and there's nothing wrong with being inspired by Jurassic Park, but it's like I could tell where you got
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And not to mention, like, the Jurassic Park T-Rex is very inaccurate because of the eyebrow crests, which they're wrong.
Yeah.
They're supposed to have like a really tough keratin, not like Allosaurus like ish.
Yeah.
And
aside from the lips, the blue rhino big sculpture at the Field Museum of Sue the T-Rex is, again, apart from the lips, I think a closer thing to what I imagine a T-Rex might look like. Even though I don't think the lacrimal horns and everything are quite like that, but probably still the prehistoric planet T-Rex is probably the closest to what I imagine. But again, I mean, that's there's never going to be something that's 100% right. That's something that we kind of have to come to terms with, is like we get closer and closer. We can get 99% right, but there's always going to be some part that we're going to have to make up, which is fine.
I do like one of the Blue Rhino Studios Tyrannosaurus Rex models. Like this, there's one that's like opening its mouth like really wide, and it's like its teeth is sticking out. I'm like, this is pretty cool, because as I said before, if it had lips, it at least that its teeth would still stick out. Because, like, for example, as I said before, like when you see a lizard's mouth, you don't barely see its teeth. You can only see like a little bit. And obviously Tyrannosaurus had very long teeth, like super long teeth,
and very thick teeth too. They're not just like little blades like a shark's tooth or something like that. They're like railroad spikes.
What are your thoughts on Greg Paul's paper from last year, I believe, on the two new species of tyrannosaurs?
Oh yeah, Tyrannosaurus imperator and Tyrannosaurus Regina, or is it Regalis? That I think he said Regina.
Yeah, it was Regina.
And then Rex. Well, I agree with some of the other feedback, like Dr. Thomas Holtz had said. It's like it's not a bad idea. It's just that it's not supported by enough data to warrant that. You have to look at things like the stratigraphic positioning of things and phylogenetics and everything else like that. It's stuff that's kind of beyond my pay grade that I have to listen to the experts on to say that it warrants that split. I think a more compelling thing recently is Nick Longrich looking at Nanotyrannus and looking at the juvenile Tyrannosaurus and seeing that, well, actually Nanotyrannus looks like it's valid. And before we had kind of sunk that into Tyrannosaurus Rex as a juvenile. And I'm not 100% sure where that stands as far as it being completely accepted. I haven't seen any rebuttals really that have stood out. So it sounds like, with all the bluster that was going on with Greg Paul's paper about splitting T-Rex, and Nick's paper actually is a little bit more solidly founded and has a little bit more easily accepted, has been easily accepted among scientific community, I think.
I know that paper's already been debunked, but there was a new paper this year called Tyrannosaurus macriensis. Yeah, it's pretty interesting, but I know that Thomas Carr, I heard that on Twitter, he calls it a fan fiction because we don't know, but I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it's it seems like there's a lot of a lot of unexpected politics that go on in paleontology. I see some sniping going back and forth sometimes, which is kind of unfortunate. I like to try to look at the papers for whatever value or evidence that they have, and because sometimes personalities clash, and I know some paleontologists that I'm friends with are not friends with some other paleontologists because of a personal clash or something. And I think that you have to be careful not to let that bias your interpretation of the paper. You have to kind of let the paper stand on its own, regardless of who did it. That's kind of the idea, I think, behind doing like a blind peer review of something. It's like you don't know who's, yeah, presenting
That,
it, right?
that's why like I kind of stay out of it. Like I really stay out of that article, well, paper, and I also obviously I I stay out of the lips versus lipless debate. And also, like, instead of like arguing each other, why can't we be friends? Because I actually have a profile on my Facebook. Well, not Facebook, um, on my YouTube profile picture, and it's like my not Wilson, my Beast of the Mesozoic Tyrannosaurus Rex figure, and the Cameron Tyrannosaurus from PNSO, and they're just hugging each other out.
Yeah, yeah, I think I saw that one.
Yeah, and yeah, I think you did saw it too. Um, yeah, I'm actually trying to.
I think it's also important.
Oh, there it is.
Oh yeah, yeah, there they are. There's buddies.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I just wanted to reemphasize that a lot of the things that I'm talking about, I consider myself to be more educated than your casual hobbyist, but I'm by no means a paleontologist myself. My training is in art, and anything scientifically related. It's something that I've mostly taken upon myself to learn, and I don't have a degree in science. I have a degree in art. So I
yeah,
try to bring more of the artistic side to it and make sure that I consult with paleontologists whenever I can to get the science part right. Because I haven't actually written a paper or gone on a dig myself. So some of the things I'm saying, I'm just saying, take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. And if you have questions about the validity of something based on fossils, you're probably better to go to the actual paleontologist than me, because I'm going to tell you what the last thing I heard, which could be outdated by now, because things move so quickly in paleontology. Things that seemed like they were valid 5 years ago are completely, outdated by now. And those guys
yeah,
keep up on it a lot better than I do.
yeah. Also, like as an artist, do you draw like cryptozoology stuff?
I have done that, yeah. One of my favorites is because a friend of mine's a big fan of Sasquatch and Bigfoot, so I do a fair number of those, and I do a lot of horror themed stuff too, because I love creatures in like vampires and werewolves and things like that. So I've done a fair amount of those, and I've actually done some crossover stuff with some zombie dinosaurs, which I know some other places have done that, some other artists have done that, but
I know
I
you.
did a
Yeah,
Frankenstein T-Rex and a mummy raptor and some other things that I thought were pretty funny.
I think I saw one of your arts that you drew a zombie tyrannosaur. I can't remember. I also know that you you did a Photoshop of like the biggest animal that can fly, and that was like a T Rex. That was pretty
Yeah, I did
funny.
that for April Fool's last year, and I did
Yeah,
kind of like a spoof article, almost like an Onion article. And I actually took one of the photos that they used for their American Voices thing, and I tried to put as many obvious clues that it was just a fake thing in there, but people still seem to fall for it. And I had this. I took one of one of the oh gosh, I forget his name. Does a skeletal drawings website. Scott Hartman. And took one of his Tyrannosaurus skeletal profiles, and I just added some huge Pteranodon style wings off to the side, and I just had this article just with some obviously fake names, just saying things like, "Ah, wow, we never would have thought this. We thought these were just random trees that were laying nearby or whatever," and then we finally
yeah.
found the truth. But
I feel
that was pretty crazy. I still see it pop up from time to time with people just passing it around. It's taken on a life of its own.
for some weird reason, I always thought that those wings were like dragon-like wings.
Hmm. Well, that's one of the things I thought about. It would have been pushing it to super obvious levels to have wings coming out of the back of the shoulder blades, as well as having the regular hands there and the arms. because generally speaking, when you get to tetrapods, I mean, they're tetrapods. They don't have insect level of, appendages numbers. I thought, so how can I get wings onto this T-Rex if I got these little, hands to work with? And then I started thinking about how people, keep on saying, well, T-Rex arms are a lot stronger than you think. They can curl 600 pounds or whatever. And I'm like, well, 600 pounds is great for a human, but I mean, for a T-Rex that's 7 or 8 tons, 600 pounds isn't going to do a lot for you. And I'm like, oh, but what if we just like ride on that about how strong these little arms are because they've got to flap these giant wings, It's still ridiculous. I mean, you still have to have wings that were, I mean, aside from the fact that you'd have to have muscle power that it just wouldn't have, you'd have to have wings that are a lot bigger than the ones I showed in order to have enough surface area for it to fly. It just wouldn't work physiologically, even with the big wings that I put on there.
Yeah. I also like noticed that you also like drew like a picture of like a tyrannosaur with like alien like features, like you put like fully feathers or hair on it, and then you had like alien like a trunk or whatever.
Yeah, and that was me actually kind of poking a little bit of fun at the all yesterday's mentality and this idea that we're not making dinosaurs weird enough, so we're just going to push it as weird as we can. And then you start seeing things like like the air sacs on Dreadnoughtus, or people putting whiskers all over everything now because why not? And it's just like, well, geez, I mean, if you're going to go that far, then if there's no evidence for it, why not throw anything on there? And then I came up with the one that had kind of the little tendrils on it, and I called that the Cthulhu Rex, because he's one of the elder gods now. And I just put the wildest, craziest things on there, and there are things that definitely don't have any kind of physiological purpose, and some of them are physiologically impossible, like the one that have got like air sacs back in back behind the eyes. And there's just no way. I mean, there's no sinuses back there that would facilitate an air sac like that. But I'm like, why not put it out there? If everybody else is putting whatever they want on there, I'll show you how ridiculous it can be. And then some people were just like, oh, wow, that's cool. Yeah, I can see that. I'm like, no, you can't see that. That's not, that isn't a real thing. That's me joking.
Yeah. Like I heard rumors that like at the time, like I think it was like back in 2018, someone said that sauropods may have had a trunk like an elephant. I'm like, do you have any evidence for that?
Yeah, that was debunked. It was an interesting idea, and again, it's like sometimes it's good to have people push the boundaries so that that you ask the questions, because you might think to yourself, well, it's ridiculous, but you have to kind of actually put the facts to it to disprove it, right? So that makes you study a little bit more, and it makes you understand a little bit more about why it would be an unlikely feature or why this couldn't have happened, right? So you could just say, well, that looks ridiculous, I don't like it, and just be done with that. Or you could say, well, it's an interesting idea, but it wouldn't work because of this. And that way, if you say, well, it won't work because of this, then the other person won't go back and say, well, you didn't like that trunk, I'll put a different trunk on it. It's like you have to disprove the idea of a trunk as opposed to saying, well, that trunk looks dumb. You know what I mean? So, I mean, there are a lot of things I look at in paleo art where I'm like, well, that looks kind of dumb, but at the same time, there's nothing really that is impossible about it, and I can see how it could be there, even if I don't like it. So I can't say, well, it's wrong, whereas I could say with the trunk on a sauropod, yeah, I can say that's wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And obviously, like, there's no like attachments on the on a sauropod or whatever.
Yeah. Well, plus it doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Just with the adaptations that it already has. I mean, you've got this big body, long neck, long tail. In some cases, tremendously long. And I always thought of it in terms of like if you look at a giraffe. If a giraffe is going down to drink water, it's got to kind of splay its legs out, and it's got to like bend down, and it's got to get their head down there. Whereas a sauropod, I mean, their legs, I mean, they don't have to go down quite as far to get at the water. They can sweep side to side to get a food in a wide range in front of them without having to move a lot and expend a lot of energy. And it's like, well, so what good does a trunk do in that situation? I mean, you've got so many adaptations that are going on right there. The trunk makes sense for like an elephant that's high up and it's got to reach down and get water or whatever, get food without having to scoot its head down to get to where the food is. But a sauropod doesn't have that problem. its head is already
Yeah.
able to get down there.
Do you also think that sauropods could bite each other as a defense mechanism?
To bite each other?
Yeah.
Um, I hadn't really thought about it, and I don't see why they wouldn't. It seems like that would be the last thing that I would expect them to do. I would think that they would be more apt to kind of neck wrestle like a giraffes would, or tail whip each other maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
Just use their bulk a little bit more to kind of sumo wrestle each other in a way. The biting part I can just see as being, maybe I don't know even if it's a defensive thing, because they've just got so much mass and so many other things at their disposal that I could almost see them using it as love bites with mates more so than
Yeah.
fighting over mates. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because like in Prehistoric Planet in the first season, the Dreadnoughtus fight scene, like the younger bull was biting the neck out of the other Dreadnoughtus. I'm like this
Well,
doesn't
that
make
also
sense.
highlights why the air sacs on the neck seem like they'd be a horrible idea. I mean, if they're vulnerable parts of the neck, that
Yeah.
a sauropod bite could damage them. It's kind of like that's kind of a dumb thing to have as a feature.
Like for me, like if I was doing a redo of the documentary, I would just make them like neck wrestle and like stand up and fight like neck wrestle as well.
Mhm.
And until one of them gives up the fight, then it backs down, or it would just finish it off just like it did in like we saw, not
Yeah,
biting each other. Because I mean,
yeah.
don't get me wrong, I heard sauropods may have had strong jaws. That still doesn't mean that they could bite each other, though.
Well, like I said, I mean, of all the things that they could bring to bear on a struggle with another, sauropod, I think biting would be one of the last things it would want to do, because of all that mass that they've got. It's like, why not push your weight around, literally, and just kind of show your dominance by just having more strength and more power.
Yeah. I mean, not to mention, like, their necks are very, very a formidable weapon. It's
Yeah.
actually implied that their tails are useless weapons, but their necks are very powerful. That's why, like, they could use their necks to hit a predator like Allosaurus, for example, and the Allosaurus would have a big concussion or broken ribs or whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, actually, did you watch season 2 of Prehistoric Planet?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, season 2 felt much better, and season 1 I didn't really like it that much. I mean, there are some good moments of the first season, but season 2 felt much better. I
Hmm.
don't know why.
Yeah,
Like they
I
went,
like them both well enough. I don't know that I've got a favorite one, but I liked them both for sure.
I mean, like they had a good idea. Like Tyrannosaurus may have been a good nighttime predator, which I could see because owls and crocodilians hunt at night. Um, Ceratopsians and Pachycephalosaurs, they would use their heads as a weapon because obviously years ago there was a documentary, actually two documentaries that came out, and Jack Horner said that Pachycephalosaurs and Triceratops horns are fragile. I'm thinking to myself, how? How are they fragile? Because you need big headgear as a defense mechanism. You know, it just doesn't make
Yeah.
sense.
Well, if he's talking about the frills, I think he's probably talking about the frills more than the horns, and those being more fragile. I mean, they're fragile only in comparison to a T-Rex biting them, maybe because of the powerful bite force, which is what I was kind of alluding to before about the powerful bite force being a response to the evolution of armor. Um, as far as the horns, I mean, it's the sort of thing where, yeah, you wouldn't want to ram a T-Rex, a Triceratops wouldn't want to ram into the side of a wall, a cliff or something. I mean, that would break the horns. But generally speaking, you're going for horns versus soft parts. A belly or a leg or a tail or something like that, not bone on bone. As far as the horns go, as far as the frill goes, there's definitely some validity, I think, to the idea of them being used for display. some coloration and some patterning on that makes a lot of sense. And if you look at a lot of the other frills that ceratopsians have, with the centrosaurs and the chasmosaurs and everything like that, they've got some ornate things going on. Some things that are kind of splaying out, and jugal horns, going out here and there, that aren't necessarily a defensive thing, but it's a display thing or a species identification thing. So maybe they didn't need to be, the main defense to prevent a neck bite or anything like that, but maybe the frill part was a little bit more for display.
Yeah. I also know that, like, I heard rumors that Triceratops would not charge at a T-Rex because it would like break its neck or whatever. But what it would do is just stand its ground, and then it would just like that.
That's an interesting thought. And it's interesting to think about that. I hadn't really looked into that particular hypothesis, and thinking about the stance and the walking posture of Triceratops, and that's kind of gone back and forth over the years. And the trackways currently show like a Triceratops would have, it's kind of hard to show, but arms out, but their feet would be kind of turned towards, so it wouldn't be like this. It would be like that. If that makes sense. And I wonder how that works when it comes to forward locomotion, and whether or not that makes it more difficult for it to do anything like a charge. Certainly, I don't think it would be galloping or anything like that. But yeah, interesting thing to look into. I'll have to ask a few people what they think about it.
Yeah. Because obviously, like, you have horns for a reason, to defend yourself. Like, it's not gonna surrender against a predator. It has to fight back.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also important to note too that sometimes they've got a dual purpose, right? So part of it is defense against predators, and part of it is fighting over mates. Like for example, modern deer, their antlers are used for kind of jockeying over mates, as well as sometimes used for defense too. So you've got kind of a dual purpose thing. There are some ceratopsians like Pachyrhinosaurus, for example, that don't really have horns. I mean, they've got a big chunk on their on their nose, basically, but they're not going to be piercing anything. They're basically, it's almost like they've got a giant club on their head. They can maybe use the bash, or they could just fight over mates and kind of like push each other, back and forth.
Yeah, that would make sense, and it's also implied with like pachycephalosaurs as well. But we don't know. Although there was a report that pachycephalosaurs may have headbutted each other, like we saw in the documentary.
Mm-hmm.
But they could neck wrestle, and they would push back like this. But we don't know.
Right. Sure.
Yeah. What was I trying to say? Crap. Oh, do you think that cloning dinosaurs is a bad idea?
Well, putting aside the idea of whether it's possible or not, let's say for the sake of argument that it is possible. I think that there is ethical problems with that. I mean, you'd have to have a very controlled environment, and it would be mostly done just for the satisfying the curiosity of humans. Which, I mean, I would love to see a living, breathing, Tyrannosaurus for sure. But is it ethical to bring an animal to life that has no community, no place in the world anymore? The environment's changed quite a bit. The ecosystems changed quite a bit. I mean, I don't think you can just get a pack of dromaeosaurs and release them into the wild, and expect them to thrive, because they don't have a breeding population. They don't have any kind of adaptations to that evolution would have provided them if they had continued to evolve. So I think from an ethical standpoint, I mean, to me, that would be a bad idea. From a curiosity standpoint, I would love to see one, but I would think it would be a bad idea.
Yeah, because I know that like they're trying to clone a woolly mammoth, but it's not going to happen. And also, like, where are they going to put a woolly mammoth hybrid or whatever? And like even back then, like it was very cold, so it would suffer.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there's a certain argument to be made for not resurrecting anything that's been extinct for X number of years. I don't even know what the cutoff would be, but rather trying to help kind of replenish the numbers of endangered species or recently extinct species like passenger pigeons or something like that, or Carolina parakeets. Animals that might have been driven to extinction by deforestation or human expansion or something like that, but we still have viable DNA to clone from. There might be a better argument for that than there is trying to bring back something that kind of has been left behind as far as ecological the ecological landscape has become.
Yeah, yeah. Like I just stay away from the cloning crap. Like
Yeah.
I just don't. Um, have you ever drew footprints of dinosaurs?
Not specifically for the sake of drawing the footprints. I mean, I've included them in some of my illustrations, but I haven't done a lot of those.
Yeah, I heard that footprints is easy though. Well, then again, I don't know, but yeah,
One of the things that's really cool about footprints is, of course, footprints don't lie in terms of, like I said before, about Triceratops and the stance that it would have. I mean, you can guess at so many things based on the way that the limbs would go together in the skeleton. But then you can come up with different ideas about, well, how far apart were its feet? Did it walk more one foot in front of the other, or was it more splayed out, or whatever? And you can guess at that until you actually find the footprints. And the footprints say, well, this is how it walked. And then you have to make the skeleton kind of fit where the feet are definitely going to go. So they solve a lot of questions, that you might have for something like that. And also speed, so you can measure the distance between strides and kind of determine whether or not they were moving fast, moving slow, based on the animal's, size and the size of their limbs relatively. You can get a fairly rough estimate of what speed it was moving to. A lot you can discern from footprints if you've got a good set of trackways.
yeah. I just find it very fascinating. I know that there's also a fossil park in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the
Biloxi Trackway.
yeah, Lexi Trackway. It's the Acrocanthosaurus hunts the Sauroposeidon.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty interesting. Not to mention it's like river,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
Yeah, it's a pretty famous one. I know for the longest time it was, the idea that they didn't really know for sure which dinosaurs were involved, so they just kind of defaulted to Allosaurus and Brontosaurus, as being, the likely ones that were involved in that kind of chase thing. And then there's been some question about, well, was it a chase or was it just a follow? Were they just following the tracks to pick off a straggler? And it's possible. A lot of times they'll look for the sick or the old or the weak to kind of lag behind and become easy prey, because when they're all together in a big herd, they're strength in numbers. So they might want to wait for somebody to kind of break off from the main herd and take them.
Yeah, and obviously, if it did chase, sauropods can't run
Mm-hmm.
because, because they're so big. You know, I don't even know if they could even speed walk.
Well, I think that most animals can speed walk a little bit if they have enough incentive. You put a forest fire behind them and they're going to move.
Yeah,
Maybe not a sloth, but
but if you're an animal that's like 50 tons or more, then
yeah.
that's a problem.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got to take it as a relative term, though. I mean, speed walking for an animal that normally moves 2 miles an hour would be, speed walking at 4 miles an hour, which still is pretty slow, you know. But compared to what they normally would, maybe they might not have moved a heck of a lot to begin with. They're saying they're eating for a while and just using their neck to kind of sweep back and forth and reach lower and higher levels of things. They might not have had to expend very much energy, moving until they ate everything that was in their reach and then had to move a little bit then. But a lot of that's kind of speculation on my part.
Yeah. Yeah, it is pretty interesting. And in your art, did you those Tyrannosaurus rexes that were hunting the Amontosaurus, were they in a gang, or were they just in a family group?
That was meant to be a family group. So the two larger tyrannosaurs that were in the background are kind of the parents, and then this was based on the idea that the teenagers or the youngsters would have a different hunting strategy than the adults. That the adults, being kind of like we were talking before about the Displetosaurus versus Albertosaurus or Rhodosaurus, about having more of the kind of going after the armored dinosaurs and the big bruisers, with the adults, and then maybe going after the Admonosaurs and the smaller, faster creatures as a teenager. It was just an idea that I was exploring there with that one, and I think that there's an element that can be interpreted in that illustration where some people see that as, well, it's cooperative hunting, like they've had a strategy to hunt this way. But I think, my thing is, it's a little bit more likely that they just happen to be all converging on this guy, and this little Admonosaurus is just kind of panicking and got himself cornered, basically. Not necessarily that they lured him into a trap or anything, but just kind of by happenstance, they just happened to surround him. So it's a little bit less coordinated and somewhat more just kind of like, almost like a feeding frenzy type situation in that
Yeah,
case.
yeah. Because I heard rumors that like tyrannosaurs may have been, like I said before, since their brain is very croc-like, juveniles would hunt down the smaller prey animals such as like pachycephalosaurs and maybe a separated baby triceratops or whatever. And as they get older, they go after the big guys like an adult triceratops or
Mhm.
Edmontosaurus or even maybe an Alamosaurus
Mhm.
or whatever. Although an Alamosaurus is too much, but maybe a youngster or whatever. Yeah,
And I think it's important to remember too that for a lot of predators, there's always going to be a mix of active predation versus scavenging. And if people think of scavenging as lower or some sort of somehow beneath the a creature or something, but it's not really that way. And even animals that we sometimes think of as scavengers, like hyenas, are actually really good hunters. And a lot of times it's lions that are stealing away kills from hyenas. And, we think of it the other way around, but generally speaking, the only animals that are not aquatic animals, but I'm talking, terrestrial or avian, that are pure scavengers or obligate scavengers, are ones that can expend very little energy searching for something, like condors or vultures. They can ride thermals for hours without even moving their wings at all in searching for prey. So any type of active predation takes a lot of energy. And so you have to kind of weigh that against, is it worth expending that much energy to get a meal? Or are you better off just kind of like using your sniffer to look for an easier meal, that's something that's already kind of kicked over. And I don't think there's anything, glorious or unglorious about that. It's just nature. If you come up on, an easy meal, why wouldn't you take it?
exactly. I mean, and yeah, when you said that hyenas are hunters, yeah, it's implied that the Serengeti in Tanzania, they hyenas actually kill more than lions do.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it makes sense that hyenas can be both predators and scavengers, just like Tyrannosaurus. As yeah, even though Jack Horner still says that it's 100% scavenger because it can't grab things with its claws or whatever. I'm like, no, Look at hyenas. Hyenas don't use their claws.
Yeah.
They,
Well,
you
I
know,
think it's kind of come out in some kind of off the cuff interviews with some people who know Horner, who have said that he's kind of saying some of that just to kind of stir the pot a little bit and get a little bit of attention to it. That I don't know that he necessarily believes that 100%. But the thing is, if you say something safe, nobody pays attention to it, right? So if you say something controversial, then all of a sudden everybody starts paying attention to you. Which is, I mean, it kind of makes sense. I mean, if you look at just even like everyday news in the newspaper, it's like it's always extraordinary things that get the news. You never get news about, well, so and so washed his car today, because it's normal, But everybody pays attention to the wild stuff, and the wilder the better. It gets people to look. And so when it comes to things like T-Rex is 100% scavenger, he knew it was going to rile people up because they have it kind of ingrained in their mind that this was like the predator of all predators. You can't even imagine that this thing would scavenge anything, let alone be mostly a scavenger. And I think that's what he was trying to tap into, is kind of tweak people about that idea.
yeah. Now there's like memes going around about Jack Horner and stuff like that. And I know that there's also, I heard in a documentary that they also mentioned that Jack Horner doesn't like Tyrannosaurus, which would make logical sense because, like,
well, he's not really a Tyrannosaur guy. His specialty isn't in that.
Yeah, even though that he already wrote a book on Tyrannosaurus, though, which that's kind of hypocritical. But...
Well, I think it was partially just because, for one thing, I mean, there's money to be made for making a book about T-Rex. Very few people want to read a whole book about Maiasaura or anything like that, even though, I mean, I might, but, you aren't going to get, as many clicks or as many books sold, on something like that. You put T-Rex on the cover, it's kind of like almost a guaranteed, at least a look, if not a buy from people.
Yeah. And it's like, Horner, you get what you get. I understand you want to look for hadrosaurs, but you get what you get. You don't get upset.
Yeah, I'm definitely more interested in hearing things like that. People like Phil Curie or Thomas Holtz or Thomas Carr, whatever, are saying about the Tyrannosaurs, because they've spent a lot more time studying them, and a lot more time describing them. So, not saying that necessarily that they are de facto correct, just that I know that they've spent a lot more time studying them, and so I trust that they are taking a lot more information into account when they're presenting their papers.
Yeah. Friend of mine, Dino Diego, says, I like your Tyrannosaurus designs. They look really cool.
Thanks, Mr. Diego.
Yeah. I think he saw the Tyrannosaurs that were like hunting the poor Edmontosaurus.
Oh yeah, that poor Edmontosaurus.
That Edmontosaurus was a juvenile, right? Or was it a...
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it looks pretty tiny.
Yeah, it was meant to be a juvenile that kind of got separated from its family and has been kind of running along this stream, and basically with the younger Tyrannosaurs in pursuit, and kind of got itself stuck into a tight spot, where they kind of surrounded it, and now it doesn't really have anywhere to go.
Yeah,
because I would expect them to be more in a family group normally.
Are you ever gonna do Triceratops? Well, T-Rex versus Triceratops artwork?
Yeah, I did one actually a while back. It's actually kind of a bigger panoramic piece. Let's see if I can find it and send you a link to it. But that was actually one that I had done and redone, and I don't know if I posted the newest version that had no feathers on it. So this might be an older version. I might have to look for something here. Paleo art.
Tony Montana says, big fan of your paleo art. Chris, keep up the good work, man.
Oh, thanks. Okay, so now I'm going to send you the link here. I'll send you it in Messenger if that's all right.
All right.
And like I said, this is an older version of it. So I think the newer version is not going to have feathers on it.
Yeah. I think I saw one of your older pictures of like sauropods, I believe.
Let's see the right one here. Sorry, going back and forth between my phone and my my browser here. I did the brilliant thing of copying the link on my browser and then deciding I'm going to go to my phone to paste it. I'm like, hey, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
Here we go. I'm going to paste it in.
Technology's a pain.
Yeah, sometimes it can be.
Oh, I see it. It looks like it has feathers.
Yeah, that's the older one that had the feathers. Yeah. And I've got a newer one where I took those feathers out, and I was very, very happy to do that. And I don't think I ever actually uploaded that or posted it. So I'm going to have to try to do that tonight. Because I like the way that turned out a lot better. Let's see if I possibly have it now.
Yeah.
Because I put some pectinodons in the foreground, kind of watching the fight, and they're like these little dromaeosaurid type creatures, and they were fun to do. I just wanted to get this little juvenile one that was kind of really excited about the fight, just kind of like getting all hyped up.
At first, I thought they were like aquaraptors, but
yeah,
what are they called?
pectinodons.
Are they troodontids?
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say, yeah, pectinodons. It's so weird that troodon itself is invalid, but the family troodontids is valid.
Yeah.
It's weird. I don't know why. I don't know why. Like, it's just, I don't know.
I'm wondering if I can get a screen grab here, maybe, and just share it in chat. Yeah, let me see if I can get a screen grab and share it in chat of the newer version of that piece that I showed you.
Yeah. I'm not really good with that either. Like,
It's going to show it or not. Maybe let's see. I can share a screen, can't I?
yeah, you can.
All right, so let's see.
Because I don't know how to.
Present, share screen. Okay, share screen. Tab to share, okay. All right, there's that. Here we go.
Oh.
Whoops, is it still there? Yep.
Yeah, it looks like a family group of tyrannosaurs that's hunting a triceratops, and the troodontids are just like looking at each other. Well, looking at the fight.
Yeah, and the little one is super hyped up about it. And then back here you can kind of see the other triceratops is trying to come to the aid of this guy right here, but might be a little too late. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is another example where it can be interpreted as either cooperative hunting with, this T-Rex being the decoy while another one moves in for the kill, or it could just be opportunistic. They're both coming after this guy, and the Triceratops can only take on one at a time. So, this is the one that is closest, so it's got the attention first.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I see it.
Yeah. And judging by the artwork, it looks like Porsus, or is it Horridus?
Yeah, that's Hortus.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little bit of a mix. I mean, Porosis, kind of evident, I guess, in the snout a little bit, but it was intended to be Horridus.
Yeah. I think I can tell because Porsus had cheeks and Horridus had cheeks. Porsus didn't have cheeks, at least. Although I heard rumors that you can only tell the difference because of the horns, but
Mm.
again, I don't know. But
Usually the nasal horn is what I look at. There's
yeah, the
usually
nasal
more.
horn,
Yeah,
the nasal horn, I forgot.
yeah,
You know, and I bet the nasal horn can also do some serious damage.
yeah. It's possible for sure.
Yeah,
Although I think the big horns probably would have reached their target long before the nasal horn would get there.
yeah, and then they could just gore the T Rex to the ground and then finish it off.
Yeah, quite true.
Yeah.
All right.
Have you ever done like oh, have you ever done like I was gonna answer that question too. Um, could you guys imagine someone made this art into an animation that would be cool?
Yeah, that would be cool. And I don't know about anybody doing the animation or any plans for that, but I did talk to a few sculptors who do 3D printing and thought about doing some versions of some of these scenes. And haven't gotten very far in that discussion yet, but I think the idea is really cool. To use some of the scenes and some of the designs and making like a 3D diorama. I think that would be pretty cool. But as far as animation, I haven't gotten that far yet. I think it would be really cool though.
Yeah. I also know that I was thinking about like would you be like a director of like your own project? Like if you want to do like your own documentary
Mm-hmm.
of dinosaurs?
Yeah, and actually, one of the things that I did back in the day, and I still do sometimes, I've done storyboards for short films, and also did some sequential art, so some comics that I did way back in the day. I still do that kind of on my own for fun, but I think that storyboarding an idea like that comes kind of second nature to me, and I would want to do, the storyboarding, the layout, the story, and the direction of it for sure. I would want to have some decent control. The main thing that I'm kind of lacking right now, skill wise, is the 3D modeling and the animation aspect of it. Um, but I think the rest of it, I would want to have some pretty decent control over.
Yeah. Because like I would like to see like a documentary a, a paleo documentary that's based on, a paleo artist who's the director.
Mm-hmm.
That would be so cool. You know,
Yeah, for sure.
like
There's let's see, there's another illustration that I think I was really kind of interested in getting a diorama type thing done. I'll share here in a second. Whoops. And this is one that was um, based on a very early one that I had done that was very popular. So this was a T-Rex in the woods here. So let me share my screen.
I think I saw that one, but yeah, you can share it on the screen. Oh,
Did that show up? There it is.
yeah, I seen this picture before. I seen this picture, and it's like you remodeled it or something.
Yeah, the original. Let me grab that one here because the original was um, one of the first ones I had ever done, actually back in the mid to late '90s, and that was. Let's see, I'm pretty sure I got
The
it right.
original one was by you, right?
Yep.
Oh, holy crap! I didn't even know that because I seen that a lot in documentary clips, YouTube clips, and like that was like very popular way back in the day.
Yeah, I'm trying to see here if I can get that. I can't really get it to blow up to size here. Hold on a second.
Like for some reason, I thought it was a Greg Paul picture at the time, but like holy
Yeah,
crap!
I had a. Here we go. I can finally present this one. Share screen window. This was the original one.
Yeah,
And that was back in, I want to see, 96 or 98.
Yeah. I mean, I was born in 97.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's
For
kind of
some reason,
funny. Yeah.
I always think that T Rex is green, like accurately, but who knows?
Yeah. To me, it made sense in the forest environment,
Yeah.
um, to have, yeah, a coloration that was like that.
And since Hell Creek looked like a swamp, well, was a
Yeah.
swamp back then, it would make
Right.
sense that maybe T Rex may have had like a greenish like coloring.
Hmm. Yeah. So that was always fun for me to kind of revisit that one. I'm actually kind of due to do an update of that pose or that idea again pretty soon. There's just things that I see anatomically, even in the updated one where I'm like, I made a mistake there. I can correct, and I wanted to try to keep the same feel and the same concept and just kind of correct the little things I see wrong here and there about, proportions of this or, the pose of this or whatever. So I'm kind of eager to get that going too.
Yeah. Like, yeah, it's very interesting. And the eyes are based on like a bird, right? That
Mm-hmm.
you do? Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say because like larger theropods like tyrannosaurs, they would have had like the body of a bird, the brain of a croc, but the eyes of a bird.
Hmm.
Like, and it
Well,
actually
especially if
showed.
it ends up being, a night hunter. I mean, you'd want to have a lot of light that can come into those eyes, right? So you'd have some really big pupils, and
Yeah,
a lot of animals you don't really see the sclera, the white of the eyes, very much at all. You might have colorful irises, which are very common in birds too. So that might be a possibility. You see a lot of birds that just have dark irises though, and it looks almost like they have black eyes. So there's a wide range of possibilities for it. And in that case, I kind of see it as an aesthetic thing. Like sometimes I'll give it kind of like a deep red or a deep brown, uh,
yeah.
even a yellow.
I also like in the drawing, one of your drawings that you did, you have like an adult with its young and the youngsters like on its snout.
Yeah, yeah. It kind of in the water. Yeah.
Yeah, because it kind of makes sense really because of predators.
Uh-huh.
But the thing is that what was this an ocean or was it like a swamp or a lake or whatever?
That was a lake. And I'm going to see if I can get the screenshot of that guy too here. So
Because like I always think that like T Rex may have swam in the lakes or swamps, but I don't think it wouldn't swim in the ocean like prehistoric planet because
right, right.
obviously mosasaurs would you know would destroy a T Rex.
Yeah.
It
So there
was
we go.
because honestly like it was a really bad idea. Yeah, that is pretty cool, and it looks like it's like the surviving hatchling
Yeah.
of what it's based on. And I also remember that he also did like an artwork of like an adult that's dead. I think it was killed by another adult, and the baby's like with it, and that was like pretty sad.
Yeah. That was the heartbreaking story. Let's see if I can get that guy up here because that was one I initially did. And I was like, I want to get people to feel something for this big giant Tyrannosaurus and shed a tear for it. and a lot of people liked it. Let me see if I can find that for. I think it was fairly recent. I did that. So I did a. Here we go. I did a black and white and a color version. I actually kind of like the black and white version a little bit better, I think.
Yeah, you kind of
So,
feel bad for the little guy because he's vulnerable with no protection of its mother.
there we go.
Or actually both of the youngsters. I always thought it
Yeah.
was one
Well, there's
youngster.
three of them actually. Yeah.
And I think it was killed by another. Yeah, was
Yeah.
it killed by another T Rex? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I thought.
the story was that there was an interloper, an intruder that came in, and the mother defended the territory and the chicks from from this interloper, and she managed to drive it off and wound it, you know, potentially fatally. And so it left them all alone, and the chicks were in hiding, and they came out, and you know, it's been a few days, and the mom finally kind of gave in to the blood loss and possible infection, you know, and they don't really know what's wrong, so they're kind of crying out for her, but it's too late.
Yeah. Although I heard rumors that T-Rex had like very horrible injuries, but this one was very fatal.
Yeah, you know, and sometimes it's just a matter. I mean, you just get just the right, you know, part cut, an artery or something like that. And you know, another wound might look like it's more damaging, but if it didn't hit anything vital, you can recover from it. But sometimes, you know, if you just happen to get hit in the right artery, you know, that could be enough.
It almost kind of reminds me of the Walking with Dinosaurs episode from Death of the Dynasty, that the mother Tyrannosaur tries her very best and she pays the ultimate price. The Ankylosaur hits it in the leg.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm actually trying to do like my own version of Walking with Dinosaurs. Like it would be like the same plot of the story, but things would change. Like instead of like Death of the Dynasty looking like an ash field, it would be swamps.
Yeah.
And also in my version, instead of an Ankylosaurus being the one to kill the T-Rex, it would be a Triceratops.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and just like in the episode, she pays the ultimate price.
Right.
Yeah.
See if there's anything else here that. Yeah, so even though I specialize a lot, or I focus a lot on the predators, I do like doing some of the other animals. Let's see if I can get a decent one of this. The pseudoceratops here is one of the ones I kind of like. Let's see if I can stop sharing and then reshare, I think.
Didn't you draw Pachyrhinosaurus before?
Pachyrhino, no.
Oh.
The pseudoceratops I did. So here it is.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Like it literally, its horns look very different. Like it looks like a Texas Longhorn of the ceratopsians.
Yeah, I always thought that was kind of cool, that shape.
Yeah, it's getting very popular a little bit.
Yeah,
because of the because of the Jurassic franchise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for
But
sure.
it is
Nothing's
still,
gonna catapult you to stardom more than being in the Jurassic World series.
yeah, but it is still a cool animal. I mean, I don't know too much about Ceratops. I believe it's a Chasmosaurian, right?
I believe
is it a
so. Yeah,
Centrosaurian?
yeah, it sounds about right.
Wait, is it a Centrosaurian?
I think so. I'd have to double check on that. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if that's still sharing or not with the new picture.
Oh, yeah, I see the baby. Oh, 3 babies. I didn't even notice.
Oh. Let's see here. Let me stop sharing and reshare again here. This one I thought was pretty fun because I did the initial sketch on my phone, and then I ended up taking it to my computer and doing the rest of it. So this is that one right there. Make this the central one. No, that's the right one. But it's
Oh yeah, that's very classic. The adult, it killed a trike, and it's
and
looking like a lizard.
Yeah, there's a little lizard here checking it out, and the T-Rex is like, "Don't even bother. I'll chop you up like nothing." But yeah, I kind of left this one kind of ambiguous too. It's like, did he kill the Triceratops, or did he just find the Triceratops and now he's going to feast on it? I kind of leave it open to the interpretation of the viewer because it could go either way.
Interesting. I mean, judging by the look, it looks like the trike's dead.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah, for sure it's dead.
Yeah. Dino Diego says, "Have you ever done sauropods before?"
Yeah, I haven't done them as much, but I have done some. So let me get one up here and get a screenshot. Oh, well, I don't need a screenshot. I can just share the screen. Here's
Yeah, I saw this one. This was like back in the early 2000s.
Yeah. And then I had another one, which might have to search for that a little bit. Yeah, I think it's in a different folder here. So this is. Yeah, I've got probably about 7 folders everywhere on my computer that have all these illustrations. So let's see here.
Yeah. Yeah, you said that those are Diplodocus, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Diplodocus is a very cool animal. Oh.
Yeah, so this guy, around that same time as I did the other one.
Oh, I also like how the artwork of the Allosaurus, it looks like the coloring is based on Fred the Dinosaur Man's artwork. I don't know if you ever heard of Fred the Dinosaur Man.
I've heard him, Fred Weirham, right?
Yeah.
And I used to see his stuff online. I haven't heard from him in a while though.
Yeah. Because his Allosaurus coloring looks like it's that, except for that obviously the only difference is that his is more like, well, then again they're both like a lion-like coloring, but he doesn't have the white spots on it like you have.
Right. And then I've got, let's see if I can share another one here.
Yeah.
And this is a little bit outdated, I think, as far as the Brachiosaurus goes, but it had the little neural spines that I think are kind of out of fashion now.
Yeah. Like if we take out of the spines, then this would be an accurate Brachiosaurus. Or actually technically no, because the head is more Giraffatitan. So
yeah. And this is another one I have to revisit. And the neck is way too skinny too.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot on this one that again, this one's late 90s.
Yeah.
So
Of course, you didn't know at the time.
Yeah. And a lot of the stuff I was doing back then was not as informed, as it is now. So hopefully I'll revisit it with a little bit better understanding of what should be there, anatomically and stuff like that.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me of the Walking with Dinosaurs. Yeah, it does a little bit when the Diplodocus like rears up on its 2 legs and tries to scare the Allosaurus away.
Mm-hmm.
Although I heard rumors that sauropods don't do that, but
well, probably would be pretty tough. I found this nice little treat for you. This is the winged Tyrannosaurus one.
Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, that was like last year. I think I even made a post on it, and I posted on my community tab, and they were laughing about it.
Yeah. I just thought it was so funny that some people were getting so angry about it. Like, this is horrible. They're ruining our dinosaurs. Science, stop ruining our dinosaurs. I'm like, it's not science. It's a joke.
Maybe I should do a post on post that artwork that you did with the Tyrannosaurus with that weird looking trunk on its
Yeah. Those are really goofy.
Yeah, like on it was April Fools or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, those are. I think I called one Dewlap Rex, and another one was Cthulhu Rex. And those, yeah, here's Dewlap Rex. There he is.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that's the one I posted as a joke to just say, yeah, if you're just gonna go willy-nilly and just throw anything on there just to be different, then why not go all the way and just go totally crazy? And of course, people were like, "Oh wow, that's a really interesting. Dinosaurs could look like this." I'm like, "No, they couldn't look like that. This is supposed to be a joke."
I know that there's also like last year that they were saying that T-Rex's brain was that a baboon, and there was a paleo artist that was like showing like using a T-Rex and it was like showing its butt or whatever. Like it had like a baboon like butt. At first, I was like really mad at it, but then the artist said that it's just a joke.
Yeah.
Because obviously, T-Rex is not that smart of a primate. I mean, don't get me
Right.
wrong, crocodilians and theropods are still smart animals,
Mm-hmm.
but I wouldn't go that far of saying that it's a primate, level,
Right. Right.
I also like how you did with even though that I disagree with it, but the T-Rex like flipping over the ankylosaur with this big stump or whatever. Yeah. You see, I always think that like if T-Rex decided to kill an ankylosaur, I just think they would just flip it over and then use its foot claws to rip the belly out.
Yeah, and that was something that kind of was in a lot of the older dinosaur books I saw. That was kind of like the idea was that they would flip it over like a turtle on its back, and then go at it that way.
Yeah. Or it could like if it was off guard, then T-Rex would like bite the skull and then pierce it because T-Rex had tremendous amount of bite force. I think even its jaws would even pierce an ankylosaur's head. Well, then again, actually no, because there's actually a Tarkia specimen that was also been bitten by a Tarbosaurus and it didn't pierce that well, but it died later on. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I've got to get going here shortly, sir.
Yeah, me too. I gotta go too. I gotta give my dog his medicine. But it's nice to chat with you. This is my 4th interview. I plan to do more interviews in the future, and you have a nice day. And
Yeah, you too.
very, very good interview.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll see you guys later.
Bye.